It's going to be an awkward set of inauguration bleachers for Donald Trump, the TikTok president, and all of those big tech executives sitting around Donald Trump, because the United States Supreme Court has just upheld the law passed by Congress to force the sale of TikTok to a non-foreign adversary-controlled entity, meaning not China, Iran, or Russia. Somebody else is going to have to buy it, and that forced sale has to happen on Sunday night. Or does it? I'm Michael Popak. You're on Legal AF, the YouTube channel. Let me break it all down for you right here. We've got the new order just here on Friday, fresh off the presses. Got it in my hands. Let me tell you how it came down. First of all, the Supreme Court completely rejected Donald Trump. There's no other way to put it. It's the fourth time in a week they've somehow rejected some aspect of Donald Trump. I'm not saying they're walking back and thinking better of what they did to support Trump's candidacy and to avoid him being a criminal, but they're starting to dish out some rulings that are not Trump favorable at all, pro-Trump. In a 9-0 decision, TikTok's forced divestiture, ByteDance, the company that owns TikTok, forced divestiture of TikTok goes into effect on Sunday. I'll tell you later about what the Biden administration's going to do about that. Now, how did the Supreme Court get to this point, and what did they say about Donald Trump? They made a big deal on pages 3 and 4 of a 9-0 decision. No justices opposed. None. We knew that from the oral argument a week ago that we reported on here on Legal AF and on Unprecedented, our show. They took the position that this was a foreign adversary controlled application, that foreign adversary control takes the form of ByteDance, a Chinese company that sits in China, is obligated under Chinese law to turn over all data collected to the Chinese Communist Party and the Chinese government. Period. All technology companies and businesses operating in China have to allow the Chinese government to rummage around, pull their servers, pull their data at a moment's notice without any objection. Meaning it's just a transparent conduit of information for a giant vacuum. You hear that sucking sound? A giant vacuum of information belonging to the 170 million TikTok users who were just there innocently thinking they're making fun videos and other informative videos and amazing creative content and a First Amendment communication. But what they're really doing is giving access to data and information, including algorithmic, including everything, a biometric, every piece of data you can think of is just getting sucked up into the Communist Party. And that's the problem. Now, the way that the Supreme Court took on Donald Trump is in pages 3 and 4, they just recited from Donald Trump in 2020 saying that this was a threat to national security and that we can't allow the Chinese government to have access to our data. They said it over and over again. I'll read it to you in a minute. And what they ignored, and what's going to drive Donald Trump crazy, making for that awkward moment on the inauguration stands, is that they ignored Donald Trump's last-minute friend of the court brief that he filed before the oral argument last Friday that says, I'm the president-elect. I'm going to be president. Don't worry. I'll cut a deal. Give me more time. Issue a stay. Don't let the forced sale law go into effect on Sunday. They completely rejected it. They didn't even mention it. Instead, they took time to recite what Donald Trump originally found. The other big takeaways, two big takeaways from this, besides the fact it's unanimous. One is they did not believe that this was core First Amendment speech analysis type case. They said this is a case about corporate divestiture that is content neutral, agnostic, has nothing to do with what's on TikTok. It just has to do with national security concerns that TikTok, ByteDance, has to turn over all this data to the Chinese government. That's all this is about. We don't see this as the highest level of strict scrutiny that is required in a First Amendment specific case. They see this as a First Amendment adjacent case at best. So the whole argument that TikTok made is 170 million US users, their First Amendment rights are being violated. Totally went out the window. As soon as the Supreme Court determined that this was a foreign adversary controlled application and a communications application in America, game over. Game over, because they lowered the standard of scrutiny that courts apply to such laws down to intermediate scrutiny. And it was going to be easy for Congress to pass that under their justification for passing the law, which had nothing, it's not anti-Chinese. It's anti-Chinese as a military adversary of America, not the Chinese people. So here's what they said on pages 3 and 4. In recent years, the U.S. government officials have taken repeated actions to address national security concerns regarding the relationship between China and TikTok. In August 2020, the opinion continues, President Trump issued an executive order finding that the spread in the United States of mobile applications developed and owned by companies in China continues to threaten the national security, foreign policy, and economy of the United States. Good luck with Donald Trump looking the American people in the eye now and telling him on Monday he's not enforcing the law because he no longer thinks it's a national security threat. Based on what information? He hasn't even been in the government for the last 4 years. He's not entitled to security clearance, security briefings. President Trump, again, sticking it to Trump by the Supreme Court, determined that TikTok raised particular concerns, noting that the platform automatically captures vast swaths of information from its users and is susceptible to being used to further the interests of the Chinese government. I mean, in particular, they talk about it this way. And then after that executive order was challenged and stricken down by a court, finding that the president had exceeded his powers, Congress stepped in, and then we move into the Biden administration, passing the law to force ByteDance, ultimately controlled by the Chinese government, to divest all interest and rights in any property used to enable or support ByteDance's operations of the TikTok application in the United States. Now, in particular, they went through why, just so people understand, why is ByteDance being singled out? It's not that they're being singled out. It's that they operate in China. And all companies in China have to open up their servers to the Chinese government and turn over all data. And that is the problem. And yes, the Supreme Court recognized some First Amendment implications, but they said it's overcome by Congress's proper focus on preventing China, a designated foreign adversary, from leveraging its control over ByteDance to capture the personal data of U.S. TikTok users. Now, I know a lot of people are saying, besides the fact, well, we love TikTok. I got that. And I'm not against the platform. I'm not against the videos and the content creators. I think they're great. Some of the Midas Touch people are on there. I'm against the fact that it's owned and controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. And everyone's like, well, they get our information some other way. That was ByteDance's argument in court. They have more efficient ways than just asking for our TikTok information in the Chinese government, I assure you. Like, well, that doesn't make me feel any better. People are like, well, e-commerce and China, and they can do other surveillance to get this information. Yes, but why do we want to make it so easy to give them, and then specific things that only TikTok can pick up? Through surveys, through, you think you're watching them. They're watching you. Let's do you suddenly something pops up on TikTok. You want to see what you'll look like when you're 60 years old? Plug in a photo now. That's fun. Let's plug in a photo. And now the Chinese government has a database of what Americans look like for algorithmic purposes to help their AI, to help increase their ability to maybe with a satellite pinpoint you walking around in your backyard. Yeah, that's the problem. This is the problem that the Supreme Court had on page 14 of their unanimous decision. Rather than meaningfully dispute, their big problem was ByteDance could never meaningfully dispute that TikTok poses a national security risk to America. So here's what they say on page 14. Rather than meaningfully dispute the scope of the data TikTok collects or the ends to which it may be used, petitioners contest probability, asserting that it's unlikely that China would compel TikTok to turn over user data for intelligence gathering purposes, since China has a more efficient and relevant ways to do that. That didn't make anybody feel better, by the way. They could not refute that China requires all businesses, including TikTok, to turn over personal data for their own security purposes. They can't refute it because it's the law of China. This is where we're back to the awkwardness of the dais upon the inauguration. You got the TikTok guy the president who says he's going to be sitting next to Trump. You got the vice president or premier of China, the Communist Party, coming to go to the inauguration. And you got Apple and Facebook sitting with Donald Trump. Awkward. Here's the final point of the hot take, and then I'll tell you what's going to happen next. Here's what the per curiam all 9 decision said. This is the final ruling. This is on page 19 and 20. There is no doubt that for more than 170 million Americans, TikTok offers a distinctive and expansive outlet for expression, a means of engagement, and source of community. But Congress has determined that divestiture is necessary to address its well-supported national security concerns regarding TikTok's data collection practices and relationship with a foreign adversary. For that reason, it is so ordered. That's where we're at. What's going to happen? Joe Biden's already announced that they're not going to enforce it on Sunday night, just to cut to the chase. He's going to make it a political football or hand grenade and throw it at Donald Trump. And let Donald Trump look the American people in the eye and tell them why in 2020 he felt they were a major national security risk because of the involvement of the Chinese government, and why today he doesn't. Why is that? Is it because one of your leading investors and friends is a leading investor in TikTok? Is it because Barron Trump told you, your son told you, that it helped get you elected, TikTok content creators? Is that why you have a warm spot for TikTok? And why you no longer, even though you've had no access to briefings over the last 4 years, why you no longer, with no evidence, believe the Chinese government is not using TikTok to weaponize it, to use it against the American people, our national security and our national economic security? Go ahead, tell the American people that. See, that's wise by Joe Biden. You know, every moment of political capital that Donald Trump has to waste to help his Chinese handlers, the more likely the Democrats are going to be able to use it against him at the midterms and for the next 4 years moving. Smart by Joe Biden. I'll continue to follow. If you love this kind of legal analysis and Supreme Court analysis, we got a great new show. We did a whole show about the oral argument, predicting that this exactly would happen. It's called Unprecedented. You only can find it on the Legal AF YouTube channel. You're already here.